"You did not approach this as we would have," said Q's who had joined the mission in its final phases. The crystalline being's form shimmered with complex patterns that Maya had learned to interpret as profound consideration. Our response would have been to develop increasingly specialized containment technologies, focusing on symptoms rather than cause. "That approach works for known problems," Maya replied. "But for unprecedented challenges, sometimes you need to question fundamental assumptions." "This is the essence of the human advantage, is it not?" observed the science director. "Not superior biology or intellect, but a unique approach to problem-solving that emerges from your evolutionary history." Maya smiled. "We call it thinking outside the box." "Perhaps," Q's suggested, "the true contribution of humanity to the consortium will be helping us recognize when we have placed ourselves in boxes unnecessarily." 1 month later, the Consortium Council convened a special session unlike any in its 12,000-year history. Representatives from all member species gathered to witness the formal adoption of the Integrated Approach Directive, a fundamental shift in consortium philosophy that would combine specialized evolutionary advantages with human-inspired adaptability. As the architect of this new approach, Maya was invited to address the assembly. Standing before the gathered representatives of hundreds of advanced civilizations, she felt the weight of the moment, not just for humanity, but for the future of interstellar cooperation. For millennia, the consortium has celebrated and cultivated specialized evolution, she began. This approach has created extraordinary capabilities and advanced technologies beyond what any single species could achieve alone. But specialization, for all its strengths, carries an inherent vulnerability, a tendency toward rigid thinking and limited perspectives. The chamber was silent, every being focused on her words. "Humans don't claim superiority in this regard," Maya continued. "Our adaptability was born of necessity, not choice. But what recent events have demonstrated is that both approaches, specialized excellence and adaptive innovation, are stronger together than either is alone." She gestured to the holographic display showing the combined fleet that had addressed the quantum fracture crisis. "The challenges of the universe are infinite in their variety. No single evolutionary approach can address them all. But together, combining the specialized capabilities you've perfected over millennia with the adaptive resilience that humans bring to the table, we can approach these challenges with unprecedented effectiveness." As she concluded her address, Maya realized that humanity had found its place in the cosmic community not by mimicking the specialized evolution of older species, but by offering a complementary approach rooted in their unique evolutionary history. The consortium would never be the same, and neither would humanity. What had begun as a tentative acceptance of a pre-adaptive species had evolved into a profound revaluation of what it meant to be advanced in a universe of infinite challenges. 3 years later, as Maya watched a new generation of human consortium integrated crews prepare for their assignments aboard vessels that combined specialized alien technology with human-inspired adaptability, she reflected on how far they had come. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when we first joined the mining operation?" asked Commander Park, now captain of his own integrated vessel. Maya shook her head, smiling. "I was just hoping they'd stop calling us evolutionary underachievers. And now they're restructuring their entire civilization based on our approach," Park marveled. "Not replacing theirs with ours," Maya corrected. "Integrating both to create something stronger than either alone. That's the real human advantage in space. Not that we're better, but that we're different in ways that complement their strengths." As they watched the ships depart, carrying mixed crews toward challenges unknown, Maya felt a profound sense of satisfaction. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by conquering or conforming, but by contributing a perspective that only their unique evolutionary path could have produced. In the vast expanse of the cosmos, where countless civilizations had evolved along specialized paths, humanity's seeming disadvantage had proven to be their greatest strength. The capacity to face the unknown, not with perfect adaptation, but with boundless adaptability. And that, perhaps, was the most powerful advantage of all. It's not behaving like a natural phenomenon, observed Dr. Nazari, who had insisted on joining the mission despite still recovering from the radiation exposure. There's an almost organic quality to its expansion pattern. This observation sparked intense debate among the specialized scientists, each approaching the problem through the lens of their evolutionary adaptations. The Phalanx representatives perceived energy patterns invisible to others, while the Murian mathematicians calculated probability matrices with lightning speed. Yet after 20 hours of intensive analysis and 3 failed containment attempts, they were no closer to a solution. The specialized approaches, each brilliant within its domain, were failing to synthesize into a comprehensive strategy. Maya watched the fragmented efforts with growing concern. The alien scientists were like master musicians playing different compositions simultaneously, each perfect in isolation, but creating cacophony together. "We need to step back," she announced finally, silencing the technical discussions. "We're approaching this as a collection of specialized problems requiring specialized solutions. But what if it's something else entirely?" "What do you propose, Captain?" asked Calvex, eye stalks quivering with exhaustion and frustration. "Integration," Maya replied simply, "not just of our data, but of our perspectives." What followed was a radical restructuring of their approach. Rather than allowing each species to analyze the anomaly through their specialized capabilities independently, Maya established cross-functional teams that deliberately combined different evolutionary perspectives. "Think of it as cognitive tenopollination," she explained to the skeptical scientists. "Each of you perceives certain aspects of the anomaly with extraordinary clarity, but may be blind to others. By combining these perspectives, we might see patterns that none of us can detect individually." The initial results were chaotic. Communication barriers, incompatible methodologies, and evolutionary biases created friction between team members. But gradually, something remarkable began to emerge, a holistic understanding of the quantum fracture that transcended any single species' perception. "It's not expanding randomly," realized a young human physicist, working alongside a Vosch perception specialist and a Tellurian quantum theorist. "There's a resonance pattern, like it's responding to something." This insight led to a breakthrough realization. The quantum fracture wasn't a natural disaster, but a response to the consortium's own activities in the sector. Specifically, the harmonics from their quantum communication network were creating a feedback loop in spacetime that manifested as the growing anomaly. "It's us," Maya explained to the council during an emergency briefing. "Our quantum communication network is essentially shouting into the void, and the void is shouting back, but magnified exponentially." "How do we stop it?" demanded Telnar. "We don't try to contain it," Maya replied, earning shocked reactions from the council members. "That's like trying to dam a river by piling more water in front of it. Instead, we recalibrate our entire quantum communication network to create a counter-harmonic pattern." What she proposed was unprecedented, temporarily modifying the fundamental communication infrastructure that connected the entire consortium. The specialized administrators immediately objected, citing protocol violations, system vulnerabilities, and operational disruptions. The projected disruption to consortium operations would be severe, warned Johal. Thousands of systems would experience communication outages lasting hours or even days. "And the projected disruption from the quantum fracture," Maya countered. After a tense debate, the council authorized the counter-harmonic plan. For the next 36 hours, the combined team worked tirelessly to recalibrate the sector's quantum communication network, a task requiring both the specialized capabilities of the alien scientists and the adaptable problem-solving of the human engineers. When the modified network activated, the results were immediately visible. The quantum fracture's expansion slowed, then halted, and finally began to contract as the counter-harmonic waves neutralized the spatial distortion. 3 days later, as the last traces of the anomaly dissipated, Maya stood on the observation deck of the quantum horizon, watching the now peaceful sector of space where catastrophe had nearly occurred. The training session continued for hours, exploring the practical applications of combining specialized alien capabilities with human innovation approaches. As the cadets dispersed, Maya found Science Director Kuzarith waiting for her, the crystalline alien structure refracting light in patterns that suggested deep contemplation. "Director," Maya acknowledged, "I didn't expect to see you at a training session." "Recent developments have necessitated reassessment," replied Kuzarith. "The Human Integration Program has produced unexpected outcomes." Maya suppressed a smile. "Unexpected positive outcomes, I hope." "That remains to be evaluated," the crystalline being answered cautiously. "The mining operations incorporating human crew members have reported a 43% increase in crisis resolution success and a 27% decrease in equipment loss. However, they also report a 58% increase in protocol deviations. We call that innovation, Director." "Indeed." Kuzarith's form shimmered with what might have been reluctant amusement. "The Council has requested your presence. A new situation has emerged that may require the human perspective." 2 hours later, Maya found herself once again before the Consortium Council, though the atmosphere was markedly different from her previous appearances. Where once there had been skepticism and resistance, now there was a tentative respect, though still mixed with apprehension. "Captain Chen," began High Minister Telenar, "we face a situation of unprecedented gravity. A spatial anomaly has appeared at the edge of the Antares sector, threatening several Consortium outposts and mining colonies. Holographic images materialized, showing a swirling distortion in spacetime that seemed to be expanding at an alarming rate. Our scientists have determined it to be a quantum fracture in the fabric of spacetime," continued Jovel. "The affected area is growing exponentially. If unchecked, it will engulf critical Consortium territories within 42 days. Maya studied the projections with growing concern. "Have evacuation efforts begun?" "They are underway," confirmed Telenar. "But complete evacuation is impossible given the time constraints. The outlying colonies include critical infrastructure and irreplaceable research facilities." "What containment measures have been attempted?" Maya asked. Kuzarith responded, her crystalline form vibrating with tension. "All standard procedures have failed. The fracture resists conventional stabilization methods. We have deployed our most specialized vessels with no effect." Maya began to understand why she had been summoned. "And you're wondering if a human approach might succeed where specialized methods have failed?" "Yes," admitted Jotal. "The Council has authorized the formation of a multi-species task force to address this threat. We request that you lead it." The request stunned Maya. 6 months ago, humans had been barely tolerated as provisional members of the Consortium. Now they were being asked to lead a critical mission involving the organization's most advanced technologies and diverse species. "I'm honored by your confidence," she said carefully, "but I'm curious about the reasoning behind this decision." Telnar's eye stalks swiveled in what might have been embarrassment. "Our analysis of recent operational data has revealed a pattern. Where specialized approaches fail against novel threats, the human tendency toward unconventional problem-solving has proven surprisingly effective." "In other words," Maya said with a slight smile, "you need people who think outside the box." "We need people who do not perceive the box at all," corrected Kuzarith. "The human capacity to disregard established limitations may be precisely what this situation requires." 3 days later, Maya found herself aboard the Consortium's most advanced research vessel, the Quantum Horizon, leading a team that included representatives from 11 different species. Each had been selected for specific capabilities: Felix energy manipulators, Murian quantum mathematicians, Aldorian space-time theorists, and others with specialized skills relevant to the crisis. The human contingent, drawn from various Earth vessels, included her trusted officers from the Resilient and specialists recruited specifically for their creative problem-solving records. "The situation has deteriorated further," reported Dr. Calvex, the Aldorian chief scientist, as they approached the anomaly. "The fracture's expansion rate has increased by 12% in the last 24 hours. Maya studied the real-time data streaming across the command center displays. The quantum fracture pulsed with energies that defied standard classification, its boundaries shifting in patterns that seemed almost deliberate rather than random. As they prepared to return to the Resilient, Jothel approached Maya privately. "Captain," the Murian said, his voice lowered, "there is something you should understand. The Council's decision today is not merely about classification or protocols." "What do you mean?" Maya asked. "For thousands of years, the consortium species have evolved toward specialization, gaining tremendous advantages in specific areas while losing versatility and innovation. Many of us have long suspected this was becoming a weakness, but none dared challenge the established wisdom." The commander's compound eyes studied her intently. "Humanity's arrival has created a fracture in our consensus. Some see you as dangerous, others as transformative, but all recognize that the consortium will never be the same." As they parted, Maya felt the weight of this revelation. Humans hadn't just earned a place in the consortium, they had inadvertently challenged its very foundations. The next day, as the Resilient prepared to depart Consortium Central, the view screens displayed an astonishing sight. A formation of vessels from various species, creating an honor corridor for the human ship to pass through. "What's happening?" Maya asked as she took her place on the bridge. Communications Officer Diaz, still showing signs of radiation treatment but insistent on returning to duty, checked his console. "They're mining vessels, Captain. The same ones that petitioned for human crew members. It appears to be a gesture of respect." As the Resilient moved through the formation, messages flooded the communication system. Thanks from the Delta Phi 7 survivors, requests for human advisors, invitations to share human innovation methods. "It seems we've made an impression," Park observed dryly. Maya watched the stars come into view as they cleared the station. "We've done more than that, Commander. We've started something." Whether that something would ultimately strengthen or destabilize the consortium remained to be seen, but humanity had taken its first real step toward finding its place among the stars, not by conforming to alien expectations, but by demonstrating the unique advantages of the human approach to adversity. And as the Resilient set course for its next assignment, Maya couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of humanity's contribution to the galaxy. A contribution built not on specialized biology, but on the remarkable human capacity to transcend limitations through innovation, cooperation, and indomitable will. Paradigm shift. 6 months after the Delta Phi 7 incident, the integration of humans into the consortium's operations had progressed with a speed that bewildered even the most optimistic Earth representatives. What had begun as a tentative acceptance had transformed into active recruitment, with mining vessels, exploration ships, and even scientific expeditions specifically requesting human crew members. The Resilient, once viewed as an evolutionary curiosity, had become a template for a new approach to space operations that combined specialized alien capabilities with human adaptability. Captain Maya Chen, recovered from her radiation exposure, now found herself addressing a mixed audience of human cadets and alien observers at the newly established Consortium Exchange Academy. "The fundamental difference," she explained, gesturing to the holographic display showing comparative evolutionary paths, "is not that humans are inherently better or worse than specialized species. It's that we represent a different approach to survival." The audience watched intently as the display shifted to show Earth's turbulent history, rapid climate changes, diverse predators, constantly shifting environmental pressures. Whereas many consortium species evolved in relatively stable environments that encouraged specialization, humans faced conditions that punished it, Maya continued. Each time our ancestors specialized too narrowly, environmental shifts would render those adaptations obsolete. A Murian observer raised a limb. "Yet despite this evolutionary disadvantage, your species survived." "How?" "By developing unprecedented cognitive flexibility and social cooperation," Maya replied. "Instead of evolving biological solutions to each new challenge, we developed the ability to create technological solutions, and, more importantly, to share them through complex cultural transmission. "We insist on being heard," stated the lead Tellurian. "We have direct experience relevant to your deliberations on human inclusion in the consortium." After brief telepathic consultation, the council reluctantly agreed. What followed was extraordinary. One by one, the survivors described not just their rescue, but their observations of human behavior during the crisis. They spoke of watching humans deliberately expose themselves to radiation that would kill them, of problem-solving that rejected established limitations, of decision-making based on values rather than mere survival calculations. "The humans could have saved only those of us who could fit through the maintenance tunnel," explained a Vosh colonist, its gelatinous form still showing signs of radiation damage. "By your protocols, this would have been the rational choice. Instead, they sacrificed their own safety to save all of us." "This is precisely our concern," countered Kusereth. "This disregard for self-preservation defies evolutionary logic." "With respect, Director," Maya interjected, "you're approaching human evolution from the wrong perspective. Our planet didn't allow us to specialize like yours did. Earth's environments changed too rapidly, its threats too varied. We couldn't evolve perfect biological adaptations for each challenge, so we evolved something else: unprecedented cognitive flexibility and social cooperation." She stepped forward, feeling the weight of representing not just her crew but her entire species. "Humans don't survive because we're perfectly adapted to our environments," she continued. "We survive because we refuse to accept that our biological limitations define what's possible. Where you see irrational risk-taking, we see our greatest strength, the ability to push boundaries through innovation, cooperation, and sheer determination." The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed her words. Finally, Jothel spoke. "The consortium has existed for 12,000 years based on principles of specialized evolution and rigid protocol. In 3 months, your species has..." The chamber fell silent as the council members absorbed her words. Finally, Jothel spoke. "The consortium has existed for 12,000 years based on principles of specialized evolution and rigid protocol. In 3 months, your species has challenged these foundations. This requires deliberation." The council withdrew into private session, leaving Maya and the colonists waiting in tense silence. Hours passed before they were summoned back. High Minister Telenar addressed them, his tone carefully measured. "The consortium faces an unprecedented situation. For millennia, we have categorized species by their evolutionary adaptations and specialized capabilities. Humans fit none of our established parameters." Maya stood tall despite her exhaustion. "Perhaps your parameters need expansion, Minister." Indeed, the Eldorian conceded, surprising everyone. The mining fleet captain's petition cannot be ignored, nor can the testimony of the Delta Phi 7 survivors. The council has therefore reached a preliminary decision. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. Humanity will be reclassified from Class 3 pre-adaptive sentience to a new designation, Divergent Adaptive Species. This classification acknowledges your unconventional evolutionary path and its unexpected advantages. Maya could hardly believe what she was hearing. "And what does this new classification entail?" "Full consortium membership rights," replied Jothel, "and permission to establish a human integration program for vessels requesting human crew members." It was more than Maya had dared hope for, but Science Director Kusereth added a sobering note. "Be aware, Captain Chen, that this decision was not unanimous. Many on the Council believe your species represents a fundamental challenge to consortium principles. They fear that human methods, if widely adopted, could destabilize our orderly civilization. Change often appears threatening," Maya acknowledged. "But perhaps some aspects of your orderly civilization could benefit from a human perspective." As the formal session concluded, Maya found herself surrounded by her officers, all struggling to process the implications of what had just occurred. "Did we just change the consortium's 12,000-year-old classification system?" asked Park incredulously. and potentially their entire approach to space exploration, added Dr. Nazari. This is monumental. Maya nodded, feeling both triumph and deep responsibility. This isn't just about humans gaining acceptance. It's about bringing a different perspective to a civilization that's grown too comfortable with its limitations. Yes, Maya confirmed simply. The council members exchanged glances, communicating through their telepathic network. Why? Asked Jahal finally. Because survival was possible, Maya replied. And the colonists deserved our best effort. But the probability analysis indicated less than 2.7% chance of successful extraction, argued a Felix representative, their energy form pulsing with confusion. The rational choice was to accept the loss. Maya took a deep breath. Humans don't always make decisions based solely on probability. When lives are at stake, we operate on possibility, not just probability. This approach violates fundamental principles of evolved civilization, stated Telnar. Our species has spent millennia developing specialized adaptations precisely to avoid such risks. With respect, Minister, Maya countered, specialization has its limitations. When you evolve to perfectly fit one environment or function, you sacrifice adaptability to new challenges. A murmur ran through the council. This was clearly not the contrition they had expected. Your rescue team now suffers the consequences of that adaptability, noted Kuzrith. They experience pain, cellular damage, potential long-term health effects, all preventable had you followed established protocols. And 47 colonists would be dead. Maya replied evenly. My team understood the risks. They chose to accept them. The conversation continued for hours, circling around fundamental philosophical differences. The consortium species, each evolved for specific environmental niches and functions, genuinely couldn't comprehend the human willingness to push beyond biological limitations. When Maya finally returned to the Resilient, she was mentally exhausted. Commander Park was waiting in her ready room, concern evident on his features. How bad is it? He asked. I'm not sure, Maya admitted, sinking into her chair. They're not angry, exactly. They're confused. Our approach contradicts everything they believe about rational civilization. And our crew. Will there be sanctions? Maya shook her head. I don't think so. They seemed more interested in understanding than punishing. Their conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. Captain, came Officer Diaz's voice, strained despite his ongoing medical treatment. You need to see this. The view screen activated to show a stunning sight. Hundreds of ships surrounding Consortium Central, vessels of all configurations representing dozens of species. What's happening? Maya demanded. They're mining ships, Captain, replied Diaz. From all over the sector. They're requesting human crew members. Before Maya could process this information, another alert sounded. A transmission from the Consortium Council. Captain Chen, said Jothal without preamble when the connection established. We face an unexpected situation. Following the dissemination of reports about your rescue operation, we are receiving unprecedented requests for human personnel across the mining sector. Maya blinked in surprise. I don't understand. Neither do we, admitted the Murian. But the coalition of independent mining vessels is quite insistent. They believe human crew members would provide advantages in crisis situations. They're right, Park said boldly, stepping into view. Humans don't just survive crises, we innovate through them. Jaffel's compound eyes studied them for a long moment. The Council requests your presence for an emergency session. This development requires reassessment of humanity's role in the consortium. When the transmission ended, Maya turned to Park with a mixture of disbelief and vindication. It seems we've created a situation. No, Captain, he replied with a slight smile. We've created an opportunity. As Maya prepared for the council session, she received an unexpected visitor, one of the Tellurian miners she had rescued from Delta Phi 7. Captain Chen. The insectoid alien greeted her, mandibles clicking in what she now recognized as their version of respect. I come representing the survivors of Delta Phi 7. How can I help you? Maya asked. It is we who wish to help you, the Tellurian replied. The Council does not understand what you did for us. They see only protocol violations and calculated risks. They do not see the humanity of your actions. Maya smiled at the alien's choice of words. What are you proposing? We wish to testify before the Council, all 47 of us, to explain what we have learned about humans. As the Council session convened, Maya found herself standing alongside not just her senior officers, but the entire contingent of saved colonists. Their presence caused immediate consternation among the Council members. This was not authorized, began Telnar, eye stalks quivering with indignation. Maya waited for the reprimand that would surely follow. Instead, Jothel continued. The Mining Council wishes to understand how your team formulated solutions that our most advanced species considered impossible. Through her radiation-induced haze, Maya felt a surge of vindication. It's simple, Commander. Humans don't evolve to fit our environments. We change our environments to fit us. And when that fails, we adapt ourselves through technology and sheer determination. For the first time, she saw what might have been respect in the alien's compound eyes. This perspective warrants further study, Jothel admitted. Rest and recover, Captain Chen. The consortium may have questions for you when you are well. As the transmission ended, Maya sank back into her biobed, exhausted but satisfied. The cost had been high. Her entire team faced weeks of treatment for radiation exposure, but they had accomplished what the evolved species thought impossible. More importantly, they had demonstrated a fundamental truth about humanity. Their greatest strength wasn't biological adaptation, but the refusal to accept limitations, especially when lives were at stake. The breaking point. 17 days after the Delta Phi 7 rescue, the TSV Resilient remained on emergency status. In the medical bay, Maya's rescue team continued their treatment for radiation exposure. The procedures were painful and exhausting, but effective. The prognosis for full recovery was good, though it would take time. Maya herself had been cleared for light duty, her more moderate exposure having responded well to treatment. As she made her daily visit to check on her team, Dr. Nazari greeted her with cautious optimism. Lieutenant Rivera's cellular regeneration is progressing better than expected, he reported, gesturing to the officer who lay sleeping in a specialized biofield. And Diaz's neurological readings have stabilized. Maya nodded, relief evident in her features. And the psychological assessments? Remarkably positive, Nazari replied. No signs of PTSD or trauma responses. If anything, morale is unusually high. Before Maya could respond, the ship's alert system activated. Captain Chen to the bridge, came Commander Park's voice. Priority transmission from Consortium Command. When Maya arrived on the bridge, she found Park engaged in tense conversation with not just Fleet Commander Jothel, but an entire panel of Consortium officials. Captain Chen acknowledged High Minister Telnar, the Aldorian representative to the Consortium's governing council. Your presence is required. Maya straightened her uniform, still aware of the lingering weakness in her muscles from the radiation treatment. I'm at your service, Minister. The Aldorian's eye stalks swiveled in what she had learned to recognize as skepticism. The Proxima Centauri mining operation is being temporarily suspended. All vessels are to report to Consortium Central Station for evaluation. May I ask why? Maya inquired, exchanging a concerned glance with Park. The rescue operation at Delta Phi 7 has raised questions about established protocols, replied Jothel, his mandibles clicking softly. The Consortium Council wishes to review the incident in detail. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge crew in uneasy silence. Are we being sanctioned? Asked Tactical Officer Lin. Maya shook her head slowly. I don't think so. They seemed more confused than angry. Commander Park's expression remained grim. The Consortium doesn't handle confusion well, Captain. Their entire civilization is built on certainty, evolutionary specialization, rigid protocols. predictable outcomes. And we've just demonstrated that their certainty might be misplaced. Maya finished. 3 days later, the Resilient docked at Consortium Central, an enormous space station serving as the administrative heart of the Multi-Species Alliance. Maya was immediately summoned to a specially convened review panel consisting of representatives from 7 of the consortium's most influential species. The chamber they gathered in was designed to accommodate the varied physiological needs of each species: atmosphere barriers separating incompatible biologies, gravity plates adjusted for different homeworld conditions, temperature zones ranging from near-freezing to volcanic heat. Captain Chen, began High Minister Telenar from behind his atmospheric barrier. The Council has reviewed your actions at Delta Phi 7. We find ourselves perplexed. Maya stood at attention, hands clasped behind her back. I'm happy to clarify any aspect of our operation, Minister. Let us be direct, interjected Science Director Kuzrith, her crystalline form shimmering with apparent agitation. Your species deliberately exposed yourselves to lethal radiation levels, abandoned primary protective equipment, and utilized untested techniques, all in violation of established safety protocols. 60 centimeters at its widest point. Even the leanest human would struggle to navigate such a confined space in a hazard suit. For the bulkier Tellurians, it would be impossible. What about the Vosh? Asked Dr. Nazari suddenly. Their physiology allows them to alter their density and shape. Maya turned to the nearest Vosh colonist, its translucent body now showing visible signs of radiation damage. Can your people navigate narrow passages? The Vosh pulsed an affirmative pattern through its body. We can compress our forms. It communicated through vibrations that the human translators rendered into speech. But the Tellurians cannot. The impossible choice loomed before them. Save some or lose all. The maintenance access is reinforced against radiation, Kagawa continued. If you can get there, it might buy you enough time to figure out the next step. Maya made her decision. We're heading for the maintenance tunnel. All of us. The descent through the failing colony was a nightmare of alarms, shifting debris, and steadily increasing radiation. 3 times they had to detour around collapsed sections, precious minutes ticking away as their suit integrity slowly degraded. When they finally reached the access point to the maintenance tunnel, Maya's radiation meter was approaching critical levels, and 2 of her team members were showing early signs of exposure sickness despite their protection. This is it, she said, examining the narrow service hatch that led into the tunnel network. As Kagawa had warned, it was barely wide enough for a human to crawl through, even without the bulky hazard suits. The Vosh can make it, said Nazari, gesturing to the alien colonists. But the Tellurians. One of the Tellurian miners stepped forward, its exoskeleton clicking softly as it communicated. You should save those who can be saved, Captain. We accept our fate. No, Maya said firmly. Humanity doesn't work that way. She turned to her team. We need to modify our approach. Dr. Nazari, what's the minimum protection needed against the current radiation levels? The doctor looked startled. The inner cooling layer might provide 5 minutes of partial protection, but without the outer shell, you'd be exposed, yes, Maya finished, but smaller. Understanding dawned on her crew's faces, followed by grim determination. If we shed the outer layers of our suits, Maya continued, we can help the Tellurians through the tunnel. 5 minutes of exposure won't kill us. It might, Nazari corrected. And it will definitely cause radiation sickness. Maya nodded. Noted, but it beats certain death. Any objections? There were none. What followed was a desperate race against both time and biology. The humans stripped down to the minimal protective layers of their suits, thin, cooling garments designed to be worn beneath the main protection. With their reduced bulk, they were able to enter the maintenance tunnel, and then help pull and push the rigid Tellurians through the narrow passage. The Vosh, able to compress their forms to flow through the confined space, moved ahead to scout the path. Every second in the tunnel was agony. Without their main suits, the humans could feel the radiation prickling across their skin like thousands of burning needles. Maya's vision began to blur around the edges, and she could taste metal in her mouth. The telltale signs of acute radiation exposure. 2 more minutes, she gasped, helping the last Tellurian navigate a particularly tight bend in the tunnel. Keep moving. When they finally emerged into the secondary mining shaft, all 6 humans were showing visible radiation burns on exposed skin, and 2 were vomiting. The beginning stages of radiation sickness. But they were alive, and so were all 23 colonists. Resilient, Maya croaked into her emergency communicator. We need immediate extraction from the secondary shaft. Medical teams standing by. As they waited for rescue, a Tellurian approached Maya, its compound eyes studying her with newfound intensity. Why? It asked simply. Why risk yourselves for us when the consortium deemed us unsolvable? Despite her pain and nausea, Maya managed to smile. Because that's what humans do. We don't accept no-win scenarios. The Tellurian's antennae quivered. The consortium classifies this as irrational behavior. The consortium, Maya replied, has a lot to learn about the advantages of being human. Later, aboard the Resilience medical bay, as her crew received treatment for radiation exposure, Maya received a transmission from an unexpected source. Fleet Commander Joffel's imposing figure appeared on the screen beside her biode. The consortium has received reports of your unconventional rescue operation, he stated, mandibles clicking in what might have been agitation or admiration. Your actions violated 17 safety protocols and exceeded maximum permitted radiation exposure by 312%. When they finally reached the main gallery, the scene was grim. Structural supports had buckled, equipment lay scattered, and emergency lighting cast eerie shadows across the chaos. Most disturbing were the huddled forms of the colonists, gathered in a sealed chamber that was slowly losing integrity. Maya approached the transparent barrier separating them from the trapped miners. Inside, she could see Tellurians, an insectoid species with luminescent exoskeletons, and Vosh, whose gelatinous bodies were visibly degrading in the radiation. A Tellurian approached the barrier, its mandibles moving in obvious surprise at seeing humans. It tapped a communication panel. You came. The translated voice crackled through Maya's helmet. The consortium deemed rescue impossible. Humans have a different definition of impossible, Maya replied, gesturing for her team to begin setting up the emergency extraction equipment. We're getting you out of here. The Tellurian's compound eyes shimmered with an emotion Maya couldn't interpret. But how will you survive the conditions? Maya smiled behind her faceplate as her team worked with swift precision around her. We won't just survive. We'll overcome. As the rescue operation commenced, Maya couldn't help but wonder if perhaps this was humanity's true purpose in the cosmos, not to compete with evolved adaptations, but to demonstrate that innovation born of necessity could accomplish what specialized biology alone could not. For the first time since joining the consortium, she felt not like an evolutionary underachiever, but like a representative of a species whose greatest strength was refusing to accept limitations, especially when lives hung in the balance. Trial by fire. The extraction of the colonists had begun promisingly. The human team had successfully established a temporary airlock between the sealed chamber and the unstable gallery, allowing for careful transfer of the weakest survivors. 4 Vosh and 3 Tellurians had already been moved to the relative safety of the transport capsules that would carry them back to the surface. Then everything went catastrophically wrong. Structural integrity failing in Section 5, shouted Lieutenant Rivera over the comm system. The whole passage is coming down. Maya looked up to see hairline fractures racing across the ceiling, spreading like lightning through storm clouds. The Vosh colonist she was helping suddenly pulsed a warning color through its gelatinous form. Move, Maya yelled, shoving the alien toward the temporary airlock, just as a massive section of ceiling collapsed. The impact knocked her sideways, sending her sprawling across the metal floor as debris rained down. When the dust settled, Maya found herself staring at a new, horrifying reality. The passage to the surface was completely blocked, and her team was now split. 6 humans and 23 colonists remained trapped in the main gallery, while the others were sealed off on the other side with the evacuees they'd already rescued. "Status report," she demanded, climbing to her feet despite the screaming protest from her left ankle. "Commander Park's group is cut off but alive," reported Diaz, checking his communications array. "They're continuing with the evacuation of the colonists they have through the original route. We need to find another way out." Dr. Nazari was already scanning the collapsed area, his expression grim behind his faceplate. "The radiation levels are spiking. That support beam was part of the containment system for the colony's power core." Maya's suit sensors confirmed his assessment. The numbers were climbing from dangerous to immediately lethal. "How long do we have?" she asked. Nazari's eyes met hers. "At these increasing levels, 20 minutes before our suits fail completely." Among the remaining colonists, panic was beginning to spread. The Tellurians' bioluminescence was pulsing in distress patterns, while the Vosh were losing cohesion, their semi-solid forms beginning to destabilize under radiation stress. "Captain," Lynn said quietly, "the consortium evacuation protocols for this scenario are clear. They would consider this position unsurvivable." Maya looked around at the frightened aliens and her determined human crew. "Then it's a good thing we're not following consortium protocols." She activated her comm link to the Resilient. "Kagawa, we need options. The main route is blocked, and radiation levels are critical." "I'm looking at the colony schematics now," the engineer's voice replied, tense but focused. "There's a maintenance tunnel 3 levels below you that connects to the secondary mining shaft. If you can reach it, it might provide a path to the surface." "Might." Maya pressed. A pause. "It's not rated for humanoid passage. It was designed for the colony's maintenance drones." Maya exchanged glances with her team. "How narrow are we talking?" Jothel's mandibles clicked in surprise. "Captain Chen, perhaps I wasn't clear. The environmental conditions exceed our safety parameters." "Yes," Maya interrupted, "but humans have a long history of exceeding parameters when lives are at stake." The Murian's compound eyes studied her for a long moment before he responded. "The consortium cannot sanction a mission with such low survival probability." "Then don't sanction it," Maya replied evenly. "Simply don't interfere with it." After a tense silence, Jothel gave what might have been a nod. "The consortium officially advises against this course of action, but acknowledges your right to independent initiative. Mining control out." The moment the transmission ended, the bridge erupted into activity. "We'll need the experimental hazard suits," said Chief Engineer Kagawa immediately. "The ones we modified with the Phalix radiation dispersal technique." Commander Park was already pulling up schematics of the mining colony. "The main access points will be compromised. We'll need to create a new entry through the auxiliary ventilation system. That still leaves the toxic atmosphere problem," Dr. Nazari noted, his fingers dancing across his console. "Our regular filtration systems won't handle the combination of methane derivatives and metallic particulates." Maya watched her crew work with fierce pride. While the consortium species debated whether a rescue was theoretically possible, her people were already solving the practical problems of how to accomplish it. "We have something the specialized species don't," she said, her voice cutting through the tactical discussions. "Adaptability. Throughout human history, we thrive not because our environments were perfect, but because we learned to function in imperfect ones." 4 hours later, the Resilient had reached Delta Phi 7, a massive asteroid converted into a mining colony. 3 other consortium vessels hovered nearby, maintaining a safe distance from the disaster unfolding below. "Status report," Maya commanded as she entered the shuttle bay, already suited up in the bulky experimental hazard gear. "The radiation shields are holding at 89% efficiency," reported Kagawa. "Not ideal, but within survivable parameters if we stick to the exposure timeline." "And the atmosphere mixers?" Maya asked, checking the complex apparatus strapped to her back that would temporarily process the toxic gases into breathable air. 30 minutes per tank, replied Nazari. We've modified them with nanofilters based on Vosh physiological structures. It's untested, but theoretically sound. Theoretically sound, repeated Commander Park with a grim smile. That should be humanity's motto in the consortium. The rescue team consisted of 12 volunteers, all fully aware that they were attempting what the advanced species considered suicide. But as they boarded the shuttle, there was no hesitation, only determined focus. The descent to the colony was turbulent, the shuttle fighting against venting gases and fluctuating gravitational fields. Through the viewport, Maya could see the colony's surface, a once orderly installation now marred by structural damage and ominous plumes of colorful gas. Approaching ventilation access point Theta, announced the pilot, Lieutenant Jose Rivera. Surface readings are, well, they're bad, Captain. Radiation at 300% of human tolerance levels, atmosphere composed of at least 8 toxic compounds. Maya nodded. Acknowledged. Proceed as planned. As the shuttle settled onto the asteroid's surface, she addressed her team one final time. I won't pretend this isn't dangerous. By consortium standards, what we're attempting is impossible. But impossible has never stopped humanity before, and it won't stop us today. The team moved with practiced efficiency as they exited the shuttle, immediately assaulted by the harsh reality of their environment. Even through their suits, they could feel the radiation's presence, an insidious pressure that seemed to seep into their bones. Main ventilation shaft ahead, reported Tactical Officer Lin, consulting the holographic map projected inside his helmet. We'll need to cut through. The specialized cutting tools they'd brought made quick work of the outer plating, revealing a dark tunnel descending into the colony's depths. Sensor readings flashed warning after warning across their EUDs. According to these readings, we should already be dead, muttered Diaz, eyeing his instruments. Fortunately, no one told our bodies that, Maya replied, leading the way into the shaft. Keep the exposure timers running. If anyone approaches critical levels, you rotate back to the shuttle. No heroics. The descent was harrowing. Twice, team members had to be sent back when their radiation exposure approached dangerous levels. The atmosphere processors worked, but required constant adjustment as the toxic mixture changed with each level they penetrated. The following weeks were a flurry of preparation as the Resilient was retrofitted for deep space mining operations. Unlike the consortium vessels with their organic tech integration, the human ship relied on mechanical ingenuity and creative engineering solutions. On the day of departure, the Consortium Observation Committee boarded for inspection. Science Director Hughes Reith's crystalline form refracted light across the bridge as she examined the Resilience modifications with obvious skepticism. Your life support redundancies are excessive, she noted, moving through the ship with fluid grace that belied her mineral composition. Humans planned for failure, Maya replied simply. It's how we've survived. Kuzrith's faceted surfaces shifted in what might have been confusion. Planning for failure suggests expecting it. The evolved races design systems that cannot fail. Chief Engineer Kagawa couldn't suppress a short laugh. With respect, Director, anything can fail. The difference is whether you survive when it does. The comment earned her a crystalline stare that could have frozen nitrogen, but Maya noted the subtle vibration in Kuzrith's structure that indicated she was transmitting the observation to her colleagues. Good. Let them think about that. When the inspection concluded, the Resilient joined the consortium mining fleet, a collection of 17 vessels representing 12 species, each evolved for specific aspects of space resource extraction. The human ship, boxy and utilitarian compared to the organic curves of the others, was assigned to the outermost section of the asteroid belt, the most difficult and least profitable area. They're not even subtle about it, muttered Tactical Officer Lin Wei as he plotted their course. Doesn't matter, Maya replied, settling into her command chair as the stars stretched into lines around them. We're not here to meet their expectations. We're here to shatter them. As the fleet dispersed throughout the Proxima Centauri system, Maya couldn't help but feel the weight of Earth's future resting on her shoulders. Humans were the newest members of the consortium, still proving their worth to species that had been traveling between stars when her ancestors were crafting their first stone tools. But what the elder races failed to understand, what they couldn't understand through their lens of evolutionary superiority, was that humans had developed something far more valuable than biological adaptation. They had developed grit. And as the asteroid belt loomed before them, Captain Maya Chen allowed herself a small, determined smile. The consortium was about to learn what that meant. The impossible mission. 3 months into the Proxima Centauri mining operation, the TSV Resilient had met its quota. Barely. Every gram of stellar minerals had been earned through exhausting innovation and stubborn perseverance. Where the Dorians could simply extend their exoskeletons to grasp floating asteroids, human crews needed to deploy complex tethering systems. While Phalanx miners absorbed radiation that would kill most species, the Resilience team relied on carefully calibrated shields and exposure timers. Despite these challenges, Maya's crew had developed techniques that were starting to draw notice. Their adaptable approach to mining irregularly shaped asteroids had proven more efficient than the rigid methodologies of the specialized species. "Captain, incoming transmission from Mining Control," announced Communications Officer Emilio Diaz. "Priority 1. Maya nodded, and a holographic display shifted to show the imposing figure of Fleet Commander Jothel, his chitinous features arranged in what she had learned to recognize as concern. "Captain Chen, we have a situation at Mining Colony Delta Phi 7. The Murian stated without preamble. A catastrophic containment failure has trapped 47 personnel underground. Toxic gases are venting into the primary gallery, and radiation levels are rising." Maya straightened in her chair. "Are evacuation protocols underway?" "Impossible," replied Jothel. "The colony's atmospheric processors have been compromised. Any rescue attempt would require navigating through levels of radiation and toxic atmosphere beyond consortium's safety parameters." She understood the unspoken message. By consortium standards, those colonists were already considered dead. "What species are trapped?" Dr. Nazari asked, stepping into view beside Maya. "Primarily Tellurians and Vosh," Jothel answered. "Neither possesses sufficient adaptation for survival under current conditions. Projections indicate total loss of life within 12 hours. Maya exchanged glances with her senior officers, a silent communication born of shared values that transcended words. "Request permission to attempt rescue operations," she said firmly. "Intergalactic outcasts." The Stellar Consortium had existed for over 12,000 years. Its members spanned 17 galactic arms, encompassed 432 distinct sentient species, and operated under the guidance of the Grand Council of Evolved Civilizations. For millennia, they had classified, categorized, and ranked every form of life they encountered according to rigid evolutionary metrics. And then, humanity showed up. Absolutely not. The risk assessment protocols are clear. Diplomatic Minister Vexter's primary eye stalks swiveled toward Captain Maya Chen with what could only be described as contempt. "Your species lacks the necessary physiological adaptations for deep space resource extraction." Maya maintained her composure despite the dismissal. After 2 years representing Earth in the consortium, she'd grown accustomed to the superiority complex of the elder races. "With all due respect, Minister, humans have been mining in hazardous environments since before we discovered electricity. The techniques we've developed—" "Primitive workarounds," interrupted Vextor, his secondary limbs fluttering in what the human delegation had learned was the Aldorian equivalent of a condescending wave. "The consortium cannot risk its equipment on species still reliant on external protective measures rather than evolved biological safeguards." Around the circular chamber, representatives from a dozen species observed the exchange with varying degrees of interest. The consortium's classification committee had designated Earth as a Class 3 world, meaning humans were technically considered pre-adaptive sentients, a diplomatic euphemism for evolutionary underachievers. The Terran vessel would introduce unnecessary variables, added Science Director Kuzrith, her crystalline form shimmering as she spoke. Their biology requires constant life support redundancies that complicate standard operations. Maya exchanged glances with her XO, Commander James Park, who stood rigid in his dress uniform beside her. They'd anticipated resistance, but not outright biological prejudice. Perhaps what my colleagues fail to appreciate, came a rumbling voice from the shadows of the chamber, is that innovation often arises from limitation. The chamber fell silent as Elder Cthon of the Mithridian Collective moved forward. The massive Ursine alien seldom spoke at council meetings, making his intervention significant. The humans may lack our adaptations, but their history demonstrates remarkable ingenuity precisely because they evolved on a world that did not coddle them. Cthon continued. I propose we include the Terran vessel in the Proxima Centauri mining initiative as an observational test case. Maya fought to keep her expression neutral despite the surge of hope. The Proxima Centauri operation was precisely the opportunity Earth needed to demonstrate its value to the consortium. After heated deliberation conducted through the consortium's telepathic network, another technology humans couldn't access, Minister Vextor turned back to Maya with obvious reluctance. The committee grants provisional approval for one Terran vessel to join the extraction fleet, under strict supervision and with the understanding that any failure will reflect on your species standing within the consortium. Thank you, Minister, Maya replied evenly. We won't disappoint you. Later, aboard the TSV Resilient, Maya's flagship, the mood was cautiously optimistic as she briefed her senior officers. They're setting us up to fail, said Chief Engineer Aisha Kagawa, her fingers dancing across a holographic display showing the Proxima Centauri asteroid belt they'd be mining. These mission parameters are deliberately designed for species with specialized adaptations. Specifically, the Dorian's vacuum-resistant exoskeletons and the Phalanx's ability to process radiation as energy, added Dr. Victor Nazari, the ship's xenobiologist, will be at a significant disadvantage. Maya nodded. That's exactly what they're counting on. The elder races have grown complacent with their biological advantages. They've forgotten what it means to overcome rather than simply endure. Commander Park studied the mission briefing with narrowed eyes. The consortium regulations don't actually prohibit modifications to our approach, only to our equipment. That means we can innovate within their framework, Maya finished, a smile spreading across her face, exactly as we've always done.